And our fundamental position on this matter was clearly stated by President Vladimir Putin exactly 2 years ago in the year 2023 when, in response to a relevant question during one of his public speeches, he said that if any of the nuclear powers in the world conducts nuclear weapons tests, not delivery systems, not subcritical tests, but actual nuclear weapons tests, then Russia will in turn do the same. I haven't heard of Moscow officially announcing any nuclear tests, and to say that both Washington and Moscow did this at the same time is probably not very accurate in my opinion. As I already had the opportunity to mention in a recent interview with Russian media outlets, we still, at this point in time, have not received any clarification or explanation from our American colleagues as to what exactly President Trump meant by his statements, whether he was referring to nuclear tests, missile tests, or the so-called subcritical tests, which, as you may know, do not involve a nuclear reaction and are permitted under the draft treaty, or rather under the Treaty on the Mutual Prohibition of Nuclear Tests. We have not received an answer yet, and we continue to await a response. Just yesterday, there was another official meeting session of the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. And at that meeting, the representative of the United States also did not provide an answer, although it would seem, as the saying goes, that such a forum is the perfect place to clarify what exactly the President of the United States meant. And you know what else I've noticed? There's something worth mentioning. The administration is still in the process of being formed in the United States. At this stage, many of the second and third tier positions, particularly those within the Pentagon, are gradually being filled as part of this ongoing process. And so, in particular, Mr. Robert Kadlec has been nominated for the position of Assistant Secretary of Defense, that's what the head of the Pentagon is now called, for nuclear deterrence and for chemical and biological defense programs. And so he spoke in Congress a few days ago, I think it was last week, and naturally he was questioned about nuclear tests and more generally the current administration's approach to nuclear weapons. He said that President Trump's decision, and I quote, "To resume nuclear testing is in fact dictated by important geopolitical considerations. There is, at this time, still absolutely no technical necessity whatsoever for them to take place." This is a very strong statement. I am not entirely sure to what extent the author I just quoted truly understands or fully appreciates the seriousness and gravity of what he said. However, it is clear that we must interpret his statement in such a way that, as we have already discussed, there is no genuine technical necessity for this kind of testing to take place. Furthermore, the author himself concluded the thought for us, making it apparent that the real underlying purpose, as it turns out, is not technical at all, but rather it is fundamentally geopolitical in nature. And what could be the geopolitical goal for the United States? Dominance. If the factor of nuclear weapons is being used for this purpose, well, that's concerning. This is a direct indication that this gentleman, in his important position as the Assistant Secretary of Defense, will be carefully contemplating potential threats or even the possible use of nuclear weapons in order to achieve the outcomes that the United States requires in one region or another. And he also demonstrated quite a few more examples of double standards when he said that NATO's nuclear deterrence strategy could be changed due to the deployment of Russian tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. We have not announced that we are conducting nuclear tests. At the well-known and widely discussed meeting of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the President drew particular attention to President Donald Trump's public statement, in which he clearly said that Russia has been doing this for a long time, China has also been doing this for a long time. So, according to him, we should do it too. And as is known, we right away reached out to our colleagues and explained to them that there must be some kind of misunderstanding here. Well, now we are waiting for clarification. What the President received was not an order to conduct nuclear tests, nor was it even an instruction to prepare for conducting nuclear tests. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and our other relevant agencies, including the military and intelligence services, have been instructed to carefully analyze the situation and reach a consensus on whether this situation requires considering the resumption of nuclear tests. And our fundamental position on this matter was clearly stated by President Vladimir Putin exactly 2 years ago in the year 2023 when, in response to a relevant question during one of his public speeches, He said that if any of the nuclear powers in the world conducts nuclear weapons tests, not delivery systems, not subcritical tests, but actual nuclear weapons tests, then Russia will in turn do the same. What President Trump said about allegedly long resumed tests in Russia and China does not correspond to reality. If we are talking about nuclear tests of nuclear weapons, all other tests, including so-called subcritical ones, which do not involve a nuclear chain reaction, and tests of various delivery systems, have never been explicitly prohibited by anyone at any time. That's why we're trying to clarify this. No negotiations or consultations are needed. All that's needed is for the United States to simply say, all right, we also will not increase the quantitative levels under the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty for a year, at least as long as Russia continues to adhere to its unilateral commitment. That's it. No other actions are necessary here. But as for whether negotiations are underway regarding its extension, no, I repeat, the situation here is absolutely transparent. Here are the quantitative levels. They are well known. And we know what the Americans have. The Americans know what they have. Let's take an entire year to, if you will, thoughtfully cool off, carefully analyze the situation in detail, and stop measuring absolutely everything by the so-called Ukrainian yardstick. Instead, let us look at the immense responsibility of great powers for ensuring global security and maintaining global stability, first and foremost, and most importantly, from the perspective of preventing the outbreak of nuclear war. We are fully ready and prepared for this important step. This has nothing to do with any looming deadlines, because announcing an extension of the quantitative restrictions can be done at any time before February 5th.